Welcome to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. So I've got an interesting article this week, or actually today. Almost forgot there for a second that I do this multiple times a week now. So I've got an article from the Mises Institute, The Economics of Tipping. And I figured this would be an excellent show topic, primarily because there's the myth that might actually not be a myth, that might be based on reality, that libertarians don't tip well, or that libertarians simply don't tip. And I know I've been out to eat with some people that will not tip, and other people that will just tip very poorly, but they're the kind of customer that is very demanding. So if you're one of those people that says, I'm not going to tip because their employer should pay them better, or if you're one of the people that goes out to eat at a restaurant and you're like, I'm not going to tip because I didn't bring enough money to tip, well, this is pretty much an episode for you. So the article here from Mises begins, my dinner companion sounded indignant. I don't know why when I see this word, I think indigent, meaning somebody that has no money. And it might be fitting because it's talking about tipping. My dinner companion sounded indignant. It's a shame we have to tip the waitress, she said. The restaurant owner ought to pay the staff enough to live on. I imagine that is a common attitude among those steeped in our current cultural climate of envy and dislike of economic success. The anti-capitalist mentality, as Mises put it, it's easy to fall into the trap of thinking that we tip waiters out of sympathy due to their misfortune of having to work in an industry full of greedy restaurant owners who won't pay a living wage. In fact, tipping is an elegant market solution to a particular set of circumstances, often present in service jobs. That makes determining an appropriate wage extremely problematic. The practice of tipping used to be more common, applying to many more service positions than present, where it is largely restricted to waitstaff and skycaps. Skycap, if you're not familiar with the term, is the guy at the airport that will help you with your bags, or if you're in a wheelchair, they're the ones that will get you from your gate to the baggage area and then out to your car, or from gate to gate if you're in one of those airports where you have a connecting flight. Part of the reason for its partial demise is just the wandering course of economic change, but many jobs that used to be paid primarily by tips came to be covered by minimum wage legislation or simply disappeared. So why do we tip? Well, before we get to the why do we tip, let's sort of, think about some of these jobs that used to exist that people would get paid for that don't exist anymore. Elevator operators. I don't ever recall having an elevator operator in my lifetime, but when my father was younger, there were most certainly elevator operators. You would get on the elevator, and there was someone who was trained to push the button or turn a crank to get you to the floor that you were wanting to go to. And as I understand it, of course I wasn't alive then, but as I understand it, it was common practice to, tip this guy like a nickel or a quarter, something for pushing the button or turning the crank or doing whatever it was that the elevator operator did. That's a job that doesn't exist anymore. The soda jerks. There used to be, at the old-fashioned diners, and they made a brief comeback in the 90s where there would be the person that they would, make your milkshake and fill your drink and do all the other things that a wait staff person at a soda fountain would do, but their primary job was to operate the soda fountain. That job doesn't really exist anymore, partly because things have evolved to where diners don't have the big giant machine that one has to learn how to operate, and secondly, just because things evolve. So it's probably me saying the same thing twice there. But let's continue with the article. So why do we tip? At first glance, it seems rather odd that a waiter should be paid by two different people, employer and customer, for the same job. But in fact, we as tipping customers are paying for a very different aspect of the waiter's job than is the employer. The restaurant owner needs a way to get their customers' orders to the kitchen and the food out to the customer. Most anyone who can walk a straight line and operate a pencil can perform that task, but the restaurant owner also wants happy customers. And customers are happy when they have a waiter who can solve problems, handle special requests, and generally make their meal a pleasant experience. And that is a special skill set indeed. Coordinating these two different and not closely connected aspects of the job is what tipping is all about. So the next part of the article here is titled Information Asymmetry. The employer wants happy customers, which we've already mentioned, but he has a twofold information problem. As a practical matter, it is difficult for him to observe interactions between waitstaff and customers. In addition, the customer's expectations regarding the quality of service are impossible to observe. This is further complicated by the fact that staff members are heterogeneous. They are different in terms of skill level, personality, and other characteristics that affect the customer's experience of quality service. Thus, the employer does not have the information he needs to arrive at an appropriate wage for each member of his staff. The customer, however, is a participant in these interactions and as such has complete information as is humanly possible. If the customer pays the server directly for the aspect of the job, the decision of the appropriate pay is made up by the person with the most information about the job performance. So basically, you tip the waiter to compensate them for the level of service that they did. If you feel that they did $5 worth of service, you should give them $5. If you feel they only did 27 cents worth of service, you probably have extremely high expectations of your waiter and should only eat at McDonald's and Wendy's and Arby's and other fast food restaurants where you take care of everything yourself because you're probably impossible to please, which means that you probably would never be caught dead in a McDonald's, a Wendy's, an Arby's, or any other fast food restaurant where you are your own waiter. There's more on this from Mises and the Economics of Tipping on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.
Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. I intend to leave New Hampshire at the conclusion of the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and return at the beginning of PorcFest. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while continuing to produce daily Liberty media. Pensacola, Florida, Austin, Texas, Sedona, Arizona, and Denver, Colorado are already on the map. If you have a college group, a local Liberty on the Rocks, or other Liberty meetup that you'd like me to visit, you can possibly add your event to my calendar. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com. The Doublespeak Dictionary by Leslie Starr O'Hara satirizes the marked difference between the ideal of we the people and the reality of we the elite, while offering an insightful glimpse into the clockworks of the totalitarian mind. Ever irreverent but never irrelevant, the Doublespeak Dictionary serves as a subversive and humorous but timely reminder that the emperor has no clothes. The Doublespeak Dictionary is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. I'll get back to the article here, Economics of Tipping, in just a second. But first, I want to make sure that I tell you about the economics of gold and silver. Well, of course, I'm not going to tell you all about the economics of gold and silver because that would be very time-consuming. But I will tell you where you can practice some economics and purchase some gold and silver. You can do that from Roberts and Roberts Brokerage. They have been in business since 1977. That's well over 35 years. And they've been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals for as long. They now take Bitcoin for purchasing precious metals so that you can turn your profits into a long-term, stable investment. Give them a call today for knowledgeable advice on investing. 800-874-9760. That's 800-874-9760. So let's continue with the article here from Mises.org, and I will have the link in the show description. So if you just click on the show, it'll take you either to SoundCloud or Spreaker, depending on which one of the two links you click on from FPP Radio, and it will have the link to the article here. So it continues. It says, incentive alignment. Employers generally want their employees to give their best and presumably are willing to pay for that. However, the aforementioned information problem inhibits his ability to do so. Ideally, tips make the server's compensation directly proportional and immediately responsive to the quality of service provided. This aligns the employee's incentives with the employer's. Both now want to provide high-quality service to the customer, each for their own benefit. And, of course, it's impossible to say that every waiter or waitress that gets bad tips is a bad server, because you might just run upon some customers that don't understand that, they're supposed to tip. Or maybe they wind up spending more money on food than they thought, didn't bring enough to leave a tip, so, therefore, bad customer. So just because as a waiter or a waitress you don't get wonderful tips doesn't mean that you're not providing wonderful service. Could just mean that you have some bad customers. But it could also mean that, you might need to reevaluate how you do your job. The article continues with a section called Risk Sharing. Hiring a new employee entails risk. For the new employee, there's the risk that the job may not turn out as he had hoped. It could turn out to be a dead end with no future, or unsatisfactory in innumerable other ways. The employer, however, has financial risk. The new employee's skill set is unknown to the employer to at least some degree, regardless of how thorough the interview process might be. There is even more uncertainty with an inexperienced new hire. There is no history for the employer to work from. The employer has to pay the agreed-upon wage, and if the new employee does not perform as hoped, he is losing money, he being the employer. If the new employee accepts a lower guaranteed wage and makes part of his compensation contingent on performance, i.e., tips, this relieves risk in two ways. First, the employer is more willing to take a chance on a young, inexperienced worker if the wage is lower, the minimum performance level needed to make the employee worth the wage is also lower. For instance, let's look at the fast food job that I said, people that don't want to tip or people that only want to tip, 27 cents or 50 cents or, less than $1 on a meal. They should probably only be eating at, fast food restaurants. But let's look from the employer's perspective at that fast food restaurant. Right now, the federally mandated minimum wage is $7.25 per hour. When I was in high school, the federally mandated minimum wage was somewhere around like $4.25, $4.75, something like that, which means that it has now become almost $3 per hour more expensive to hire someone, which means that, prices have to increase, and of course they have because of this horrible thing called inflation, where the Fed winds up putting more money in circulation, which causes prices to increase and everything else. So it costs $3 per hour more to hire somebody now. But an unskilled worker who has never had a job before in their life does not automatically, by virtue of being alive, have $3 an hour more value because, again, they still have no skills. They have never had a job in their life. So when I got my first job, my first quote-unquote real job where I got a paycheck and had taxes ripped out of my paycheck, I had very little experience. Of course, I had worked for my father when I was younger, partly because he ran family-owned businesses and, I was easy labor. So I did have, some experience of how to work. I knew show up on time is, half of being a good employee, and then the other half is being able to, do what you're told and do it well. So I would say that at the time that I got that first job at Dairy Queen, I was probably worth more than $4.25 per hour. But had I not had any of the knowledge about having a job that I had, no, I would not have been worth $4.25 per hour. Now, someone that still has no knowledge about what it's like to have a job, no, work experience, they still are really only worth less than $4.25 per hour. Just by virtue of being alive, nearly 20 years later does not make them worth at least $7.25 an hour, or if the Democrats and Barack Obama get their way, $10.10 per hour. But because, economics and mandates, an employer cannot hire somebody for what they are actually worth. An employer can hire someone for no less than what the federal government says they are worth, or in some places what the state government says they are worth, because some states have a higher minimum wage. So for jobs where tips are involved, it does allow an employer to take a little more risk to where they can hire somebody that has no experience. They're only paying $2 and something cents per hour. The customers decide whether that person is worth more or not. So I think that more jobs should be dependent on tips. I really do. But that's, not how things are in this day and age. There's a little bit more from this when we come back.
For over 35 years, Roberts & Roberts has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They now take Bitcoin for purchasing precious metals so you can turn your profits into a long-term investment. Call Roberts & Roberts today for knowledgeable advice on investing. 800-874-9760. Coinbase is a simple and secure online Bitcoin wallet for sending, receiving, and storing Bitcoin. Coinbase also allows you to buy and sell Bitcoin using a bank account or use their tools to accept Bitcoin as a merchant. Opening a wallet is quick and easy, and for merchants, there are no transaction fees on the first $1 million worth of transactions. I trust Coinbase. You should too. Get started at coinbase.fppradio.com. That's coinbase.fppradio.com. Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system and to fully capitalize on that decision in their fundraising efforts. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com.
Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Online at fppradio.com. And if you have a smartphone, and really, who doesn't have a smartphone these days, you can actually take this show mobile with you anywhere in the world as long as you have a data connection on your smartphone or your tablet or any other listening device, as long as you have the iHeartRadio app. You don't have to, find my RSS feed and download. You can just, add Peace, Love, Liberty Radio to your favorites on iHeartRadio, and then it automatically updates everything for you. You can listen, like I said, anywhere that you have a data connection, anywhere in the world, you can listen to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on iHeartRadio. So I've got a handy short URL so that you can find the show on iHeartRadio. It's iHeart.fppradio.com. That's iHeart.fppradio.com. You will need to download an app for it to work on your smartphone or your tablet. But then you can take the show with you wherever. You don't have to download anything other than the app. So, you don't have to download each episode to be able to keep up with the show. iHeart.fppradio.com. So let's finish with this article, The Economics of Tipping. So it explains, let me just back up here for a second. It says that if the new employee accepts a lower guaranteed wage and makes part of his compensation contingent on performance, i.e. tip, this relieves risk in two ways. First, the employer is more willing to take a chance on a young, inexperienced worker. If the wage is lower, the minimum performance level needed to make the employee worth the wage is also lower. Second, since the employee can increase his earnings directly and immediately by improving his performance, the job is not so much of a dead end. The low-paying job becomes a valuable stepping stone, allowing the young, inexperienced employee to learn job skills, establish a performance record, and move on to something better. It should be obvious that minimum wage legislation short-circuits this entire arrangement, making the employer much less willing to hire someone unless he is certain they are worth the higher wage. This is how lower-skilled individuals get shut out of the job market, but that's the subject of another essay, and they actually link to another essay. This is the magic of the market. Even mundane habits like leaving a tip for a waiter play an important role in social cooperation and coordination. It is an elegant solution to a knowledge problem developed spontaneously through the action of a myriad of market participants. When left alone, people are pretty darn resourceful. And I would agree. And speaking of people that are resourceful, let's talk for these last couple of minutes about free market socialism. Have you stopped laughing yet? Because I know when I first saw this, free market socialism, I scratched my head for a second and thought, wait a second, those two things don't go together. And then I actually started to read the article and realized, yeah, maybe they can. So the article here is from Reason.com. Again, it will be in the show notes. And, you will have to finish reading this on your own because there's not enough time for me to finish the entire article in this show. Libertarians are individualist. But since individualist has many senses, that statement isn't terribly informative. Does it mean that libertarians are social nonconformist on principle? Not at all. Some few libertarians may aspire to be, but most would see that most would see that as undesirable because it would obstruct their most important objectives. Lots of libertarian men have no problem wearing a jacket and tie, or shoes, socks, and a shirt on occasion when that attire is generally expected. And I sort of had to chuckle there about libertarians wearing shoes, socks, and a shirt, which I almost always wear a shirt unless I'm in the shower. But the shoes and socks, not so much. It's currently like 30-something degrees in Keene, New Hampshire, and I am not wearing shoes or socks. I'm actually barefoot this moment, and my feet are getting a little chilly, so I might actually, put those horrible blasted shoes and socks on at some point today. But for the most part, I try to wear flip-flops as much as possible. But that's, my own personal problem and not really related at all to this article. But the mention of shoes and socks sort of had me go on that tangent. The article continues. It says, virtually all libertarians observe the common customs of their societies, just as they conform to language conventions, if for no other reason than they wish to be understood. I don't know a libertarian who would regard this as tyranny. In fact, as one's appreciation of the libertarian philosophy deepens, so does one's understanding of the crucial behavior-shaping role played by the evolution of customs and rules, the true law, that have nothing whatsoever to do with the state. Indeed, these help form our very idea of society. Libertarians are individualist in other respects, however. They are methodological individualist, which means that when they think about social and economic processes, they begin with the fact that only individuals can act. That's shorthand for only individuals have preferences, values, intentions, purposes, aspirations, expectations, and a raft of other related things. In truth, these words don't actually refer to things we have, but rather to things we do. Strictly speaking, we don't have preferences, we prefer. We don't have values, we value. We don't have purpose, we act purposefully. And so on. I'm reminded here of Thomas Saz's statement that mind isn't necessarily a noun, but a verb. It follows that one cannot lose it. A favorite book, and this is a statement of the author of this article, not a statement by me. A favorite book of mine on this and related matters is Gilbert Ryle's The Concept of Mind. From here, it's a short step to the principle that the unit of morality is the individual person. Morality concerns what individuals should and should not do and what sort of life is proper for human beings. Interpersonal morality addresses, among other things, when the use of force is permissible, if ever, and this leads into the ideas of rights, entitlements, and enforceable obligations, also attributes of individuals. You will, if you want to know more, have to finish this article on your own time. In the meantime, online, fppradio.com. This is Peace, Love, Liberty Radio.